Ford Motor Company. The name echoes as a cornerstone of American innovation and progress. Ford isn't just a company. It's a thread woven deep into America's narrative, a symbol of national success. This is the legacy of the assembly line, of putting America and the world on wheels. Ford revolutionized the industry, making cars for the masses and redefining what was achievable. For generations, the blue oval stood for trust, steady employment, and American pride. Families built their futures around Ford, believing in its promise of security. So when Ford stumbled, not because of foreign competitors, but due to a decision made in Washington, it sent shockwaves across the nation. Uncertainty spread quickly, unsettling the company and its people. The idea that Ford, a company that weathered the Great Depression and fueled the war effort, could be threatened by American policy was almost unimaginable. Ford had always represented grit and endurance, surviving crisis after crisis. Headlines blared, "Ford in trouble." The story dominated the news, capturing the attention of a nation that always viewed Ford as rock solid. From Michigan's factory floors to quiet suburban streets, the news spread. In towns where Ford was the backbone, worry and doubt began to grow. This wasn't just a corporate issue. It was about real people, families, and entire communities whose lives revolved around Ford. The impact was personal, affecting millions who relied on the company. The company that had survived oil shocks and global competition now faced a new kind of threat. This time, the danger came from home, from policies meant to help but causing harm instead. The irony was hard to miss. Measures designed to protect American industry were now hurting one of its greatest champions. The debate over tariffs and trade exploded into the national spotlight. Ford, the face of Made in America, was caught in the crossfire of a trade war. The company's fate and the future of American manufacturing hung in the balance. The shock forced a nationwide conversation about trade, jobs, and the real price of economic decisions. People everywhere started to question the impact of choices made in distant offices and government halls. Folks wondered, how could this happen to Ford? If a giant like Ford could be shaken, what did that mean for everyone else? The story became more than just a business update. It was a wake-up call. It forced Americans to face tough truths about the state of their economy. It revealed deep cracks in the foundation of American manufacturing. Weaknesses that had been ignored for years were now impossible to miss. Ford's vulnerability hit home for millions. For many, Ford was more than a paycheck. It was a way of life, a source of pride and identity. This was no longer just a business issue. It was a defining moment for the nation. Ford's struggle became a symbol of the challenges facing American workers everywhere. Ford's fight became an unexpected chapter in America's story. It was a reminder that even the strongest can be shaken by forces beyond their control. This was a tale of unintended consequences, demanding answers. Lawmakers, experts, and everyday Americans searched for solutions, hoping to keep history from repeating itself. The nation watched, realizing that even its most iconic names weren't safe from change. Ford's story had become America's story, its past, its present, and the uncertain road ahead. To understand Ford's crisis, we have to look at the policy that triggered it: tariffs. In 2018, the Trump administration imposed steep tariffs on imported steel and aluminum, aiming to revive American metal industries. The idea was simple: make foreign metals more expensive, boost domestic production, and protect American jobs. But the reality was more complicated. Ford, like other automakers, relies on huge amounts of steel and aluminum. Even though much was sourced domestically, tariffs drove up all prices. Domestic producers raised theirs too. Suddenly, the cost of building every car and truck soared. The policy designed to help one industry was now threatening another. The auto industry, a massive consumer of metals, was caught in the middle. The storm meant to shelter American manufacturing was now battering it from within. The impact on Ford was swift and severe, sending shockwaves through the company almost overnight. Ford's CEO revealed the tariffs had already cost the company about $1 billion in profit, a staggering figure that caught both investors and employees off guard. This wasn't a projection or a distant worry. It was a real, immediate loss that hit the company's bottom line hard. Domestic steel prices soared, leaving Ford with nowhere to turn for cheaper materials, and forcing the company to absorb the extra costs. Retaliatory tariffs from other countries made exporting American-built Fords more expensive, slashing Ford's competitiveness in key global markets. Ford was squeezed from both sides: higher costs at home, shrinking markets abroad, and mounting pressure on its workforce. That $1 billion could have gone to new vehicles, factory upgrades, or worker bonuses, investments that drive innovation and growth. Instead, it vanished in the trade war, evaporating before it could fuel Ford's future. Ford's president explained, "U.S. steel was now twice as expensive as China's, making it nearly impossible to compete on price. And steel from Europe was also far cheaper, putting Ford at a disadvantage not just in America, but around the world." The company's competitive edge was dulled, both in the U.S. and globally, as rivals took advantage of lower costs. The tariffs didn't just hit the balance sheet, they threatened Ford's future, casting uncertainty over jobs and long-term plans. The company faced tough choices: cut costs, delay investments, and reconsider expansion plans just to survive. Ford had to fight to stay afloat, making painful decisions that affected thousands of workers and their families. The numbers told a stark story. Trade policy had real, painful consequences that rippled through the entire industry. Ford's struggle was a warning to all American manufacturers about the risks of sudden policy shifts. The cost of protectionism was measured in lost opportunity, shrinking profits, and a diminished future for American industry. The perfect storm was here, and Ford was right in its path, fighting to weather the fallout and emerge stronger. Ford's billion-dollar loss quickly hit the factory floor, sending shockwaves through the company and its workforce. Production slowed, shifts were cut, and anxiety spread among workers who suddenly faced an uncertain future. For many families, Ford jobs weren't just employment. They were a proud tradition, passed down through generations, and a ticket to the middle class. Now, that hard-won stability was at risk, and families worried about how they'd make ends meet. Communities in Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky felt the pain. Less overtime, less spending, and a ripple effect that hurt local businesses and small towns alike. The tariffs, meant to protect American jobs, were now threatening them instead, creating new challenges for workers and companies. Ford announced a major restructuring, driven in part by the mounting financial pressure and the need to adapt to a changing market. Workers faced layoffs and uncertainty, while entire towns built around Ford plants braced for the economic and emotional impact. The human cost of the trade war was undeniable, touching families, friendships, and entire communities. The promise of America first felt hollow to those now fearing for their livelihoods and their children's futures. The policy's unintended victims were the very people it aimed to help, leaving many searching for answers and hope. The future for Ford's workers and their communities was suddenly uncertain, with no clear path forward in sight. Ford's troubles sent shockwaves across the country. Americans were confused. How could a policy meant to help manufacturing hurt Ford? The disconnect was jarring. Patriotic rhetoric clashed with harsh economic reality. News outlets and talk shows buzzed with debate. The billion-dollar loss stunned even experts, revealing how interconnected the economy truly is. The idea of a simple win from a trade war was shattered. The story forced a national reckoning about trade, supply chains, and unintended consequences. Ford's struggle became a case study in economic complexity. The lesson was clear. In a global economy, actions have far-reaching, unpredictable effects. Ford fought back, but options were limited. The company tried to renegotiate with steel and aluminum suppliers, but tariffs left them with little leverage. Cost-cutting became urgent. Projects were delayed, operations streamlined, and investments postponed. The focus shifted from innovation to survival. Ford lobbied Washington for relief, joining other manufacturers in calling for exemptions. But the administration stood firm, prioritizing the metals industry over automakers. Despite all efforts, the financial damage was too great to fully absorb. Profits fell, and the pressure mounted. Ford's fight was uphill, against forces beyond its control. The company adapted where it could, but the shadow of tariffs loomed large. The future remained uncertain as long as the policy stayed in place. Ford's resilience was tested like never before. Ford's crisis rippled through the entire economy. Suppliers faced shrinking orders and rising costs, putting thousands of small businesses at risk. Car buyers saw higher prices. Tariffs added hundreds of dollars to new vehicles. The policy meant to help industry became a hidden tax on American families. Ford's competitors, like GM and Chrysler, faced the same struggles. The whole U.S. auto sector was squeezed, losing ground to global rivals. Communities felt the pain: less job security, less spending, and local businesses hurting. The impact reached far beyond the factory gates. The tariffs, intended as a targeted tool, became a blunt force that hurt many. The interconnected economy meant no one was truly insulated. The fallout was widespread, touching lives from dealerships to diners. Ford's ordeal offers hard-won lessons for the future. The global economy is complex. Simple solutions like tariffs can backfire. Protecting one industry can harm another, especially in interconnected sectors like automaking. For Ford, the crisis highlighted the need for resilient, diversified supply chains. For the nation, it showed that economic patriotism must be matched by pragmatism. Policy should be shaped by real-world evidence and collaboration with industry. The story is a cautionary tale. Even giants can be shaken by policy shifts. In a globalized world, every action has a reaction, often unexpected. The path forward requires strategic foresight and shared responsibility. Ford's struggle reminds us: the success of American industry depends on careful, thoughtful stewardship.